USS Constellation. There's a grand lady in Baltimore who has taken her rightful place as the Inner Harbor's crown jewel in the heart of the Chesapeake Bay. Launched in 1854 as the last all-sail ship designed and built for the United States Navy, Constellation's century of service embraced the ages of sail, steam, gas, diesel, and nuclear power. Imagine that, launched in 1854 and still afloat. Even more exciting, visitors can come aboard Constellation and explore to their heart's content. On board Constellation, history comes alive as visitors touch, feel, and experience what life was like for sailors during the Civil War. Just bring your imagination. Constellation is the second of 3 U.S. Navy vessels to carry the same venerable name. The first, the frigate Constellation, was built right here in Baltimore at Harris Creek and launched in 1797. Known as the Yankee Racehorse, the frigate Constellation was one of the first 6 ships built by the United States Navy. The ship you see here, the sloop of war Constellation, was built at the Gosport Navy Yard in Portsmouth, Virginia, and launched in 1854. A newspaper account from the day of her launch reported that there were 8 pieces of the original frigate Constellation contained within her timbers. The third Constellation was the aircraft carrier CV-64. Launched in 1960, she served until 2003. President Ronald Reagan called her America's flagship. But it's the sloop of war Constellation that's here in Baltimore today, and the Chesapeake Bay has always been central to her story.
Throughout her century of service, Constellation served in and out of the Chesapeake Bay. It was kind of like coming home every time she returned to the Chesapeake Bay. She was created here at Gosport Navy Yard. And throughout her career, she came to Annapolis. She spent many years there. She sailed to Philadelphia. She sailed up and down the bay several times. And every time that she returned, it was like a homecoming for her.
Constellation's early career is perhaps her proudest and most exciting. From 1855 to 1858, she sailed the Mediterranean to protect American interest and show the flag. From 1859 to 1861, she served as flagship of the U.S. African Squadron, cruising off the western coast of Africa in pursuit of American slave ships.
The most important thing that people learn on this ship that very few had ever heard of was the ship's relationship to the African Squadron. That this country did have at sea, before the Civil War, a fleet of ships designed solely to free slaves who'd been captured and were on their way to the Western Hemisphere.
Constellation captured 3 slave ships, Delicia, Cora, and Triton. Cora alone carried a human cargo of 705 captive Africans. While Constellation was flagship, the U.S. African Squadron captured 14 slave ships and freed almost 4,000 Africans destined for slavery in the Americas. During the Civil War, Constellation served once again in the Mediterranean, where she protected U.S. commerce, took part in the blockade against the Confederate raider Sumter, and showed the flag throughout the Mediterranean world. 1865 saw the end of Constellation's active sea service. From 1871 to 1893, home once again in the Chesapeake Bay, Constellation served as the practice ship for the midshipmen at the United States Naval Academy, where she earned the nickname the Cradle of Admirals. Constellation's cruising grounds stretched from Annapolis northward to Newport, Rhode Island, as the ship provided the future leaders of the United States Navy their summers of sail training at sea. In 1878, Constellation, along with the USS Constitution, sailed to Le Havre, France, carrying American exhibits for display at the Paris exhibition. In 1880, Constellation's guns were removed, her inner compartments reconfigured, and her hold filled with 500 tons of food and clothing destined for the relief of famine in Ireland. She departed from New York on March 30th and arrived in Queenstown, Ireland 3 weeks later. English and Irish dignitaries, including the Duke of Edinburgh himself, celebrated Constellation's mission of mercy. In 1892, Constellation made her last transatlantic voyage, carrying priceless works of art from Italy and France to America for display at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Constellation took her final cruise the next summer. As her crew of midshipmen disembarked, Constellation's sailing career was at an end. Although the age of sail had passed away, Constellation remained active, and from 1894 to 1933, she served as a stationary training ship at the U.S. Naval Training Center in Newport, Rhode Island. And it was there in Newport that Constellation saw her last official naval service as the relief flagship for the U.S. Navy's Atlantic Fleet and Battleship Squadron 5 during the Second World War. Almost 100 years old, USS Constellation was still serving her country. In 1955, Constellation returned home to the Chesapeake Bay, this time for permanent display in Baltimore. Constellation was kept afloat until 1994, when she was closed to the public. A critical restoration completed in 1999 ensured that the USS Constellation would remain open to visitors, and improvements to the ship continue today.
Constellation is constantly changing. If you came on board a year ago, you'll see something new today. If you come on a year from now, you'll see something new then. We're constantly working to improve the ship.
Constellation's restoration has helped keep Chesapeake Bay maritime trades and traditions alive. Today, Constellation is the largest example of Chesapeake Bay shipbuilding in existence. That's enough history for now. Let's see what happens when you come aboard Constellation.
When you come on board, cell phones and everything don't work anymore. This turns into the 1860s and you are back in time on the Constellation learning what it was like to be here.
People come on board and they get touched by this walking through history that they're able to do, and they're able to see the hammocks and see the officer's wardroom and sit in the captain's cabin and have this whole immersive experience that you're never going to get at most types of museums. So this is a really wonderful experience for them, and they have no idea what they're missing out on, and then they come on board and they keep coming back.
We fire the cannon, turn the capstan, and ring the bell daily, and we recommend the free self-guided audio tour, which comes in two flavors, one perfect for children, the other for adults. Plus, there's the ever-popular Powder Monkey Tour for kids and hands-on adult tours like A Ship as a Machine and Black Sailors in Navy Blue. Groups can also come aboard and sling their hammocks in our overnight program or host special events. Our crew knows the USS Constellation is an amazing experience, but don't just take our word for it. Here's what recent visitors had to say.
It's very kid-friendly, very family-oriented, and the kids will love it, and they'll come out asking questions, which I love.
It transports you back. You can almost get the feel that you were actually there, because laying in that hammock, like, oh my goodness.
I think it's really interesting because it shows you exactly how they slept and how they ate and how they went through life.
But it was an excellent tour, and I think it's something they need to maintain for generations to come.
Should be kind of a must for people who are in the area and have an hour or two to spend.
It's just amazing to see what people lived in, how hard they worked in order to accomplish what they did.
It brings your learning alive, and that it helps you to understand. Like, rather than looking at pictures, you can actually see what they were in, and you can actually understand it.
I think it makes me appreciate being an American, knowing these people went through these things to put me where I am now.
I'd say come see it.
Yeah, we were a little bit leery because of the age of our children, 4 and 7, but they enjoyed it so much. It really kind of surprised us. We thought it'd be more for us, the parents, but no, they loved it.
They had a good time.
Yeah, they had a great time.
So come aboard USS Constellation, and while you're here in Baltimore, be sure to visit these other attractions of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network. The Baltimore Visitor Center, a good place to start your tour of this historic city and region. The National Aquarium on Pier 3 near the USS Constellation Museum. The Lightship Chesapeake, and 7-Foot Knoll Lighthouse, both part of the Baltimore Maritime Museum. The Frederick Douglass Isaac Myers Maritime Park and Museum, headquarters of the Living Classrooms Foundation. Fells Point, an early American shipbuilding center, and the Fells Point Maritime Museum. And of course, Fort McHenry National Monument, where the people of Baltimore valiantly defended the city from the British during the War of 1812, and Baltimore's own Francis Scott Key wrote our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. So welcome aboard USS Constellation and enjoy your visit to the historic sites of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network.